isomers, then we have to go for next point of attachment, in which actually on this side we have carbon, then oxygen, and on this side we have carbon, carbon, carbon. So that would be given, this one would be given higher priority. uh, I have to go for the pen notation. Oh, sorry. What happened? Okay. So I have to go for the pen notation. So now this one would be of the higher priority and this one would be of your lower priority. So now both the higher priority groups are on the same side of your carbon-carbon double bond. That's why that is your Z configuration. So it has your Z configuration, not E. Okay, you can just ask whether we have to assign E and G in this case. No, this is not a geometrical isomer. This does not give C trans or G any of these things, because here both are your hydrogen. On the carbon, this carbon, we have both are hydrogen, so we do not have to worry about the geometrical isomerism in this double bond. Only geometrical isomers are possible in this double bond, carbon carbon double bond. Next, configurational notations for optical isomers, which we have already discussed yesterday, but still this is in your unit 5, so we would just go through it rapidly. So we can give notations to our optical isomers. Optical isomers are the isomers which rotate the plane polarized light, or we can say those are actually optically active. So in that case, whether it can be a asymmetric molecule or it can be a dissymmetric molecule. Asymmetric molecules means where we do not have any kind of symmetry, no plane of symmetry, no center of symmetry, no rotational axis of symmetry. But in case of your dissymmetric molecules, you have only simple axis of rotational axis of symmetry. You do not have any plane of symmetry. So these optical isomers can be named by relative method or by absolute configuration. So in the relative configuration, we, that is your DL system of nomenclature. In that case, we just take a reference compound, for example, uh, that is your glyceraldehyde. So D-glyceraldehyde has OH group on the right hand side and L-glyceraldehyde has OH group on the left hand side. So whenever we have a molecule where your groups which are actually like your OH groups, for example NH2, CN, OMe. So all these groups, if they are on the right hand sides, we name them as your D form, and if they are on the left hand side, we just put them as L. So for example, we have given the example of lactic acid. So in this lactic acid, OH group is on the left hand side, so this is denoted as the L configuration. And in case of alanine, NH3 group or NH2 group is on the left hand side, and the D-alanine would be where your NH2 group is on the right hand side, and all others would be remain the same. So this is your D-alanine. Similarly, we can have array system of nomenclature where that is actually the absolute configuration, which gives the here you do not have to relate it to another molecule related to the like glyceraldehyde. Here you can itself rank it or itself give the configuration notation to the molecule to the chiral center. So here the groups which are attached to your chiral center are ranked according to their atomic number or are given priorities, and you have to view the molecule in such a way that the fourth priority group or atom is away from you, or that is given in your dashed line. Then you trace the path from first priority to second to third, and if the path traced is clockwise, then that would be your R configuration. If the path traced would be counterclockwise, then that would be given your S configuration. So when your lowest priority group is not on the not on the dashed line or not away from you, and if it is on the solid line, then you have to just swap the result. If it comes gives R, then give S, and if it is A, it gives S, then denote is R. We have discussed it yesterday, so I am not going again through details. Next is how you determine the configuration. Okay, so just by seeing the formula, we can just say, okay, this is the configuration. Okay, but how you determine whether my compound, which I got it, just by seeing the molecule, we cannot determine what is its configuration. So there are different methods to know the configuration. So first one is determination of configuration by chemical correlation. So this method involves chemical transformation of a compound, suppose X, of unknown configuration to another compound, say Y. Suppose we do not know the configuration of X, but we are converting it to another compound which configuration is known. Okay, in that case, we can just say the configuration of X by how, for example, we do not know what glyceraldehyde is given to me. Okay, I am asked, just check what glyceraldehyde you have, whether it is your R or S, or whether it is D or L. So what I did, we do a chemical transformation where this center, the chiral center at carbon number 2, is going to remain unchanged. So in that case, actually this only glyceraldehyde. So when this glyceraldehyde is treated with hydrogen cyanide, it undergoes actually one carbon extension takes place here. So by first nucleophilic addition, then hydrolysis, and finally upon oxidation, that gives you tartaric acid. And this tartaric acid, because as you can see in this chemical conversion, the carbon number 2, in this case this is your carbon number 2, and here it is become carbon number 3 because we are naming it like this. So this center, this carbon, there is no change undergoing this carbon center. That means its configuration is also going to remain unchanged, or going to be the same. So it was seen that this tartaric acid, we know that tartaric acid has three configuration: uh, minus tartaric acid, plus tartaric acid, and mesotartaric acid. Among them, these two tartaric acid have OH group on the right hand side and H group on the left hand side. On the, we have to see this carbon. Okay, actually this glyceraldehyde give this tartaric acid, this two tartaric acid, this tartaric acid is not formed. That means the configuration which is on this carbon is same in our tartaric acid. That means this is the configuration of your glyceraldehyde, which is a D-glyceraldehyde. So by chemical correlation, you can find out the configuration of a molecule. For another example, D-serine. Okay, so D-serine could be converted to compound A by the following sequence. As you can see here, there is no change in because we are not changing any chemistry at carbon number 2. That means its configuration will remain unchanged. So from this, you can just see whatever be the configuration here, it is going to give the configuration here. And this compound can be again prepared from one amide, and where there also there is no change in configuration at carbon number 2. So this one, when hydrolyzed, this amide when hydrolyzed, that gives the aspartic acid. So from this, we know that D-serine also gives this amine, and which can again be provided by your amide by Hopfian degradation, and it can give you aspartic acid where your carbon number 2 is unchanged. That means this one and this one should have the same configuration at carbon number 2. So by that we can just say that this aspartic acid has the configuration in which NH2 group is on the right hand side as in your D-serine. So you can correlate through your chemical transformations. Then there is another method where you can determine the uh, configuration of your compound or of your molecule. So here we know that there is a racemic mixture. So how yesterday we have discussed racemic mixture. So racemic mixture is obtained by the equimolar, by the addition of equimolar amount of your enantiomers, both the enantiomers. Suppose I have a R 50% and S 50% of the same compound. Okay, same molecule. The R enantiomer and the S enantiomers, we equally mix it so that that forms a racemic mixture, and that is known as your racemate. This racemic mixture cannot rotate the plane polarized light, because if it will rotate in the clockwise direction, the other one will rotate in the anti-clockwise direction. So that was about our racemic mixture. So what is our so that gives us a racemate. So what is a quasi-racemate? So quasi-racemate is here, you just check these two examples where if we just ignore this chlorine and bromine, you can just see this is almost similar backbone, and this is the chlorine is this group is down the plane and this group is up the plane. So these two are actually mirror image of each other, but they are not enantiomers. If we consider the chlorine and bromine, if it is one hydrogen here, one hydrogen here, they would be enantiomers. But these two are not actually enantiomers, but they are actually, the structure is almost like their enantiomer. But in that case, if this one is left-handed, uh, rotate the plane polarized light in anti-clockwise, this one would rotate the plane polarized light in other direction, that is your clockwise direction. So these two, they are not actually enantiomers, but when we mix these two, that will form a racemate. That will form a racemate, that is known as your quasi racemate. This is actually not a racemic mixture, but that is a quasi racemate, because they are not actually the enantiomer of each other. So this quasi racemate, how you would know that okay, they form a quasi racemate. So when your so when suppose we have A and B form a compound, and A and the enantiomer of B form a mixture. Okay. So how we know that it form a compound and how we know that it form a mixture? So we study the phase equilibria. So when as you can just see, when we mix that, if it is a racemate or it forms a compound, actually racemate means it forms a compound, then it would give a phase diagram. It would give a phase diagram of like this. So that means these two are A and B. When we are uh, getting this one, A and B of form a compound, that is forming A and B, forming a compound, and A and enantiomer of B, it's, suppose I would just say minus B. Okay, the other isomer of B, that gives you a solution. So in that case, we can say that A and B are of opposite configuration. Suppose we know the configuration of A, or if it is of the plane, we know that the chlorine or bromine, whatever group is of the plane, and it has to be your down the plane. The group where it differs, that has to be your down the plane. So from that, we, if it is give, means A and B are giving you a compound or phase equilibrium like this one, and its enantiomer A and the enantiomer of B gives a solution, then in that case we can say that A and B are of opposite configuration. So if we know one's configuration, suppose we know that the substituent group, whatever is that, it is up the plane in case of A, then the substituent where it differs, that would be your down the plane. So this is about your quasi racemate. Then next comes your stereogenic and prochiral centers, where we use the term stereogenic center and where you use the term prochiral centers. So stereogenic centers, I would come again on the later slides. The stereogenic centers are that if you change, it is a center if you change or change the position of any two groups. In that case, that gives you another enantiomer or another stereoisomer. So that is known as your stereogenic center. Okay, what is your prochiral center? So you just see in the addition reaction of this ketone, in that is your acetone, that is going to give you cyanohydrin. But when I just exchange any of this okay, uh, suppose I do the cyanohydrin addition. In this case, in case of an aldehyde, it generates a stereogenic center, or it generates a chiral center here. So this chiral center, that means this chiral center is derived from this aldehyde, so which is a prochiral, means because after doing some chemical transformation in one step, that is going to give you a chiral compound. So this carbon center is known as a prochiral centers. Next comes your topicity and prostereoisomerism. Okay, so ligands such as two, for example, in this case, we have two hydrogen atoms. They are identical. You can just say they are identical. We can just say those are homomorphic. So if we consider these two ligands in isolation, they would be same because the hydrogen atoms, they would be same and indistinguishable. But when I change any of these hydrogen, suppose I change one hydrogen, in this case, if I change this hydrogen by fluorine, that is going to give me this molecule, and if I change this hydrogen by fluorine, that is going to give me this molecule. And if you can just see, these two are mirror image of each other, and this generates a chiral center here. So now these two hydrogens are actually not homomorphic, they are enantiotopic, because by replacing them, they are forming enantiomers, or they are giving us enantiomers. So these hydrogens, we can just say they are enantiotopic, and as they are giving two different stereoisomers, two enantiomers, these are your heterotopic, they are not no more homotopic. For example, here in case of propane, these two hydrogens are homotopic, because uh, if I replace hydrogen with any other group, I would just show it in, I think in the next slide I have it. Yes, for example, in this ethane, you just see this is your ethane molecule. If I change these two hydrogens, red hydrogen or your blue hydrogen, with deuterium, suppose another group, in this case I have given deuterium, so both are going to give you the same molecule. So that means these two hydrogens are actually homotopic, they are giving you the same molecule. But when I have this butane, okay, so in butane, this hydrogen at your carbon number 2, if I change this hydrogen, that gives me this one which has a R configuration, and if I change this red hydrogen, that is going to give me another enantiomer, the mirror image of that one, that gives me another enantiomer. So these two hydrogens are no longer homotopic, they are heterotopic, and in this case they are giving you two different two enantiomers, so those are your enantiotopic. Okay, or we can just say these are stereotopic, but in this case it is, first of all, this is an heterotopic, that is giving you different molecules. And again, this different, what is the relationship between these two molecules? They are enantiomers, so we can just say these are enantiotopic. uh, Diastereotopic, when we get two diastereomers, for example, in these two hydrogens, if we replace these hydrogens with a different group, so when red hydrogen is replaced, we get this molecule, and when blue hydrogen is replaced, we get this molecule. So this one is actually E configuration, and this one has your Z configuration. And what is the relationship between these two molecules, which we obtained by the replacement or by the substitution of your H group by D? These two are actually geometrical isomers, and we just tell them diastereomers. So these two hydrogens are known as your diastereotopic. When they give enantiomers, that is your enantiotopic. When they give diastereomers, they are known as your diastereotopic. So another example of your diastereomers, here we have used geometrical isomer. Suppose we have already a stereocenter in that one. So in that case, this stereo center, the configuration of this stereo center is remaining the same, but when we are replacing these two hydrogens with a different group, so now on the upper one, this one is already R, but the new stereo center is generated here. You cannot say these two are enantiomers, because this stereo center is fixed RR, and this one is giving S, and just sorry, that was giving RR, and here it is giving RS. So these two are also diastereomers. So these two, the relationship between these two hydrogens are diastereotopic. Uh, so now we can just say homomorphic ligands can be homotopic or heterotopic. So heterotopic means they can be stereotopic. This stereotopic can be again of two types: enantiotopic and diastereotopic. Next, like your ligands, we can have phases also, stereotopic phases. We would come to it. So first we have to give the nomenclature to stereo heterotopic ligands or stereotopic ligands. So we would just take this example which I have taken in the first case. So when we replace this hydrogen number 1 with deuterium, we are getting an enantiomer which has a configuration R. And when we are replacing hydrogen 2 with deuterium, we are getting a configuration as S. So if you are not sure how to give that one, uh, actually we have to just assign priority 1, 2, 3, and hydrogen is going to be 4. Deuterium is heavier than hydrogen, so it would be higher priority as compared to hydrogen. And this is a Fisher projection formula. So hydrogen is actually in the vertical axis, vertical line, so we do not have to worry about. So while tracing the path from 1 to 2 to 3, it is a clockwise direction, and in this case it is an anti-clockwise direction. So as replacement of this hydrogen gives an R configuration, it would be named as pro R, and replacement of the other hydrogen gives you an S configuration, so that would be named as your pro S. So as we have stereotopic ligands, similarly we can have stereotypic phases. So where mostly in case of your double bond cases. So now you see our carbonyl compounds, they are actually trigonal planar. So we can either see it from up the plane, that is one phase, and we can see it down the plane. Okay, so there are two phases: one is your up the plane, one is your down the plane. So when you and how you name it, so when you see, if you see it from up the plane, okay, this phase, the up phase, and you trace the path from 1 to 2 to 3, that is going to give you a clockwise direction, so that would be re. And if you view it from down the plane, when you trace the path from 1 to 2 to 3, that would be from in an anti-clockwise fashion. For example, if we view this one from up the plane, it would look like this, and if we just view this molecule down the plane, then it would look like this. So in that case, it would be re phase, and when it would be counterclockwise, that would be your C phase. So how you add, like how you are going to get your enantiomers, that is your enantiotopic phases. Stereotopic phases can be again enantiotopic phases as well as your diastereotopic phases, but here I am just saying your enantiotopic phases. We can also have diastereotopic phases. For example, in this case, if your incoming nucleophile, we are doing a nucleophilic addition reaction. So if the nucleophile is attacking from the up the place, then OH group will go here and nucleophile will come here. So in that case, the stereochemistry, it would be R. And if it is going from down the phase, it is going to give the other enantiomer. So this both the phases, here we do not have a ligand, we are not exchanging the ligands, we are just adding one group either in the top phase or in the bottom phase. The top phase, in this case, the top phase is giving one enantiomer R, and the bottom phase is giving the other enantiomer. So these two phases, the relationship between these two phases are, they are enantiotopic to each other. Similarly, this hydrogen cyanide addition to your benzaldehyde, that from the top side addition that gives an S configuration and the bottom face addition gives you one R configuration. Next is stereogenicity. Okay, so what is your stereogenic center or a stereocenter? So stereocenter is an atom or a group of atoms if the interchange of two ligands attached to it results in a new stereoisomer. Uh, so as the stereoisomerism is generated by such a center, it is called a stereogenic center. For example, suppose we have a chiral center carbon here, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we just interchange the ligands 1 and 2, that was going to give us another stereo center. So for example, in this case, we would just see whether that is going to give you an mm, stereogenic center or not. Okay, we are interchanging for this compound, that is our mesotartaric acid. Okay, if we interchange ligands at C3, okay, we interchange the ligands at C3, that means OH will come to the right hand side and hydrogen will go to the left hand side, then that gives us another molecule, and these two are not enantiomers because we know that this is not the mirror image of this one. These two are actually your diastereomers. Okay, but still it is going to give you another stereoisomer. It is not giving the same stereoisomer, it is giving you another stereoisomer. So we can just say this carbon number 3 is a stereogenic center. Similarly, if we just change the ligands at carbon number 2, that is going to give you this compound, and these two are also not enantiomers, they are diastereomers, but still that is a stereoisomer. Okay, so we can also say that carbon number 2 is a stereogenic center. Similarly, in case of your alkenes, okay, this is your cis-2-butene. If we are interchanging these these two groups, then we are getting trans-2-butene. So cis-2-butene and trans-2-butene, that those two are geometrical isomers, or that is giving you another stereoisomer. So we can just also say this carbon are your stereogenic centers. So we cannot say those are chiral centers, we can say those are stereogenic centers. Chiral centers are different, which is actually where we get your which rotate the plane polarized light. So chiral center is different, but stereo center is, in general, we can say whenever we interchange a group of atoms which is attached to the center gives a new stereoisomer, then that is your stereogenic center. So we can have it in your tetrahedral carbon or in your sp2 hybridized carbon. What is chirotopicity? So chirotopicity is the phenomenon which is related to presence of a chirotopic atom. So what is a chirotopic atom? A chirotopic atom is an atom which resides in a chiral environment. This concept involves the local or site symmetry within a molecule. Thus, within a chiral molecule, all the points are chiral. Within a chiral molecule, all points would be your chiral. For example, in case of your mesotartaric acid, it is a achiral molecule because we know that it has a plane of symmetry, but it may have some chirotopic centers, we would say it. For example, these 2 points, these are actually chirotopic centers because we have 4 different groups there. Uh, for example, this one, XIX, this molecule is chiral, and we would check whether carbon number 3 is stereogenic or not. Means carbon number 3 is stereogenic or not. So carbon number 3 would be stereogenic if we interchange these groups. H will come onto the left and OH would go onto the right. If it is going to give you a different stereoisomer, we can just say that C3 is a stereogenic center. So if we do it, then that is going to give us this configuration. Okay, we have just changed it, H on this side and OH on the left side. Okay, here, and we have interchanged at carbon number 3, so we get this one. So now this one, if you just see, if you rotate it through 180 degree, and you have to just check the planes 180-degree rotation. So this carbon number 1 will come down, and carbon number 5 just opposite side. Carbon number 5 would be here, and now carbon number 4 we are rotating, so it was on right hand side OH group, so that will come on the left hand side, and hydrogen on the left. So you just see this one would give you the same compound, same structure as the starting material. So it is not giving you another stereoisomer, rather it is the same molecule itself. So that means carbon number 3 is not a stereogenic center, but still it is a chirotopic, because it is a chiral molecule, all the points are chiral. Next comes the concept of pseudo asymmetry. So we have already discussed a mesoisomer. Mesoisomer means in a molecule, although you have chiral centers, but if this molecule is not chiral, or it cannot rotate the plane polarized light because of the presence of a plane of symmetry. So this plane of symmetry can be along a carbon, like in this case it can be along a bond. Okay, this is, or in case of your tartaric acid, which we have done, that can be in between your two bonds, carbon carbon bonds. So in this case, where we have a molecule where your plane of symmetry is along a mm, chiral axis, so we have to check whether carbon number 3 is stereogenic or not, by just exchanging their position. So when we exchange OH group and hydrogen, that we get this molecule, and if you just check here also you have a plane of symmetry, and here also you have a plane of symmetry, and these two are not enantiomers because they are not mirror images, they are diastereomers. And if you just say, okay, I would just rotate it and check whether this is same as uh, the molecule XX, that is ribaric acid, but that is not giving you the same structure, it is giving you a different isomer. That means the relationship between these two are your diastereomers. So carbon number 3 is a stereogenic center, because interchange of ligands at C3 gives you a different stereoisomer, another mesoisomer. Okay, and but as this is not a chiral molecule, carbon number 3, you have a mm, actually plane of symmetry, so that is not a chiral site. So this is a achirotopic, but carbon number 3 is stereogenic center. So now such a center which is achirotopic, okay, which is achirotopic, but it is has a stereogenic center. So now this carbon number 3, we can just say it has 4 different ligands attached to it: OH, H, one group on the up and one group on the down. So now this C3 carbon has 4 different groups. And if we just see this carbon number 3, the upper part, you just see the upper part here, it is if we just give the configuration to carbon number 2, so this one is first priority one, COH group, COH group would get second priority, and the rest of this group, total group, would get your third priority, and hydrogen is in your vertical, hydrogen is in your horizontal one, and this one OH is one. So this is counterclockwise, and hydrogen is in a vertical axis, so it should be actually counterclockwise, means it should be S, but as hydrogen is on your horizontal plane, then it would be R. So its configuration is R, and similarly we can give the configuration to carbon number 4, which would be S. So now this carbon number 3, or the center, carbon 3 center, which is the stereogenic center, which we have already actually proved. So now this one, where the 2 up and down, we have the mirror image, this one is R and the lower one is S, they have the opposite configuration, then that center, that stereogenic center, is known as your pseudo asymmetric center. So the difference we can just say, when a tetrahedral carbon is attached to 4 different groups, where 2 of them are configurationally different, one is R and another is S, such a center is called your pseudo asymmetric center, and this phenomenon is known as your pseudo asymmetry. And while giving, suppose we have to give configuration to this one, so OH would be 1, and in case of your priority, R always gets higher priority as compared to S. So this would be 2 and this would be 3. And it is in your counterclockwise direction. And again, lower priority is on our horizontal axis. So it is going to be just the opposite, that is would be clockwise. So that would be designated as small r. Okay, that would be designated as your small r. And in this case, this one would be designated as small s. Okay, because this is not a chiral center, this is a stereogenic center, this is not a chiral center, we have a plane there. Okay, we have a plane of symmetry there, so we just designate it as a small r, and its other isomer, the diastereomer, it would be designated as small s. So there are many pseudo asymmetric centers, we can just check here. uh, okay, so next one is how you induce asymmetric in a reaction. Okay, so to know how in asymmetric or asymmetric are being introduced in your reactions, so there are different kind of, first we should know what are the different kind of selectivity. One is your chemoselectivity, one is your regioselectivity, then comes your stereoselectivity. Again, stereoselectivity can be enantioselectivity, diastereoselectivity, and then another class is your stereospecific. Okay, first chemoselective. Suppose we have two different type of functional groups. So when we are using a catalyst, suppose in this case Lindlar catalyst, which is actually and that gives you a that attacks only your alkyne. Okay, that attacks your alkyne in presence of alkane, so that is mostly selective to your alkynes. So this type of selectivity is known as your chemoselectivity. And regioselectivity, like to which region the attacking group is going to, which carbon or which region. So in that case, we have your regioselectivity. For example, in case of your Markovnikov addition, we have hydrogen can go to your less substituted carbon, giving the major regioisomer, and the minor isomer is where your hydrogen is going to the more substituted carbon. And when you get selectively one stereoisomer is formed in preference to other, then we get your stereoselective. Again, this stereoselective can be if you are getting one enantiomer. For example, in this case, in Sharpless epoxidation, you are getting uh, one major enantiomer, that is your 95%, the other is your minor enantiomer. So that is your enantioselective reaction. Uh, Sometimes you can get a stereospecific reaction. So the difference between stereoselect, all stereoselective reactions are not stereospecific, but stereospecific reactions are stereoselective. For example, in this reaction, whenever we are using okay, this elimination reaction, we are going to get E alkene and Z alkene. Okay, but in case of well, in case of your SN2 reaction, in case of your SN2 reaction, that is entirely stereospecific. If you are going to take R enantiomer, then that is going to give you S product, and if you are taking S, then that is going to give you R. So stereos actually the configuration of your product depends on your reactant. Okay, so that means this particular reactant will give you this particular stereoisomer, so that is known as your stereospecific. So for example, halogenation of alkene, like cis alkene is always going to give you a mixture of uh, 2,3-dibromobutane and SS2,3-dibromobutane and RR2,3-dibromobutane. That is not being that you cannot get it from transbutane, whereas transbutane would give you a SR2,3-dibromobutane or a meso compound. So this the product stereo the configuration of the product is primarily dependent on the configuration of your starting material. So in that case, that is a stereo specific reaction. And diastereoselective, when we are going to get two different diastereomers, then that comes under your diastereoselective reaction. For example, we already have this CH3 groups on the this side, so now it is going to give us two different diastereomers. So in that case, that reaction is your diastereoselective reaction. And this one also, already we have a chiral center, and this configuration of this chiral center is going to remain the same. So only we have to introduce a chiral center here, where your hydride is going to attack from down the group. So this one would going to be your major product, this one would be going to be your minor product, but you are going to get two different products, because hydride can attack from the this side or re side or C phase, giving you two different isomers. Only the configuration at carbon number 1 is going to change. So in that case, we are getting two different diastereomers. So this is a diastereoselective reaction. So this asymmetric induction, like what would going to be the main product, is given by some rules. Mostly you have actually in the addition reaction of, in case of your carbonyl compounds. So three rules are there: Cram's rule, Prelog's rules, and Felkin model. So in case of your Cram's rule, in this case, we are just considering actually this only one type of reaction, nucleophilic addition reaction of ketones, where already a chiral carbon is attached at your alpha position. So this is your aldehyde or ketone carbonyl group, and alpha position we have already a chiral carbon is attached there. So now this group has three different groups of by size. So this one would be large size, this one is your medium, and this one is your small. So according to Cram, whenever your nucleophile is going to be attacked, we can have different conformation. We know that conformation means we can, this one is a carbon carbon single bond, so we can rotate, we can get different conformation by the rotation along this carbon carbon single bond. So now in our reaction mixtures, we can have different conformations of this molecule. So among this, some conformation, when we are predicting the product, we have to actually take a model in which our nucleophile is going to attack. So among this conformation, the preferred conformation of attack for nucleophile will be the one which is of least energy. Okay, where nucleophile will attack, because in the where your molecule is in the most stable structure, because in that case, in that conformation, there would be more number of molecules will be there in that preferred conformation. So nucleophile will attack uh, in the in that conformation. So according to Cram's, in that conformation, the carbonyl group would be positioned in such a way to occupy a place between your small and your medium group. Okay, and this is your here this hydrogen is replaced by your R, and large group is eclipsing with your R group, which is attached to this carbonyl carbon. So now the nucleophile has two sides. It can attack from this side or it can attack from this side. So it would prefer to attack from your, first of all, this is the, according to him, this is the preferred conformation. Now the nucleophile has two sides of attack. It can attack from this side or it can attack from that side. So if it attacks from this side, that would be more favorable, because it will face here less repulsion, because we have a group which is smaller in size. Here it will face more repulsion. So this would be the preferred direction of attack from the side of your small group. So the major product would be this one, the 301. 30 means the same type of groups are on the opposite sides, 30. So this is the major product. The minor product is when it would attack from the side where you have your medium sized ring. So you just see it would attack from your uh, nucleophilic attack is from the side where you have your small groups. So that means the nucleophile and hydrogen, here our hydrogen was down the plane, so the nucleophile is our C6H5, that will be also on down the plane. So automatically OH would be off the plane and hydrogen will remain here. So this is, that gives you 3O. If C6H5 will come from the medium side, then that is from the CH3 side, then it is going to have the same side C6H5. here, and OH will go to your down the plane or to the side of your plane of your hydrogen here, small group. So that would give you a minor product. So according to Cramp's rule, first the nucleophile attack in a preferred conformation, and again in the preferred conformation it will attack from the side of your smaller group because of steric hindrance. So similarly, you can just predict the product here. Here we have three groups. This is large, this is medium, this is your small. So the incoming nucleophile, that is your hydride, lithium aluminum hydride, here hydride H minus will be attacked from the side of your hydrogen, or it will have the exact on the same side, exact side of hydrogen. So that would it would be the major product, and this would be your minor product, where hydrogen will be attacked from your medium sized. So this one is being argued that actually in this model, the small group, in case of your aldehyde, that would be uh, actually that makes a complexing. Actually in these all these cases we are using organometallic compounds, so where metals coordinate to your oxygen of your carbonyl atom to make it the bulkiest group, resulting in its production. Means in that case our suppose Grignard reagent, in that case suppose magnesium phenyl magnesium bromide, so that will coordinate to this side, and it won't go to this C6H5 can't go to this side because we have a CH3 group, rather we have a hydrogen here. So it would be oriented in such a way that C6H5 would be nearer to your small group, so it would attack from this side, because on the other side it will have your steric hindrance. So there are different examples. Next, so this could explain, this Cramp's rule could explain many different examples, but this could not explain satisfactorily in the reduction of cyclohexanons. And when this R group, the bulkiness of this R group were increased, in that case it failed to give the product ratio, because in that case there some other products, means which he was predicting that this one is the major product, in that case it gave other ratios, the product ratios could not be explained better. So then came your Felkin model, where he proposed that among the conformations, he- uh, actually you can just see in case of Cramp's model, he was given in an eclipsed conformation, where your R group, which is attached to your carbonyl carbon, and the large group are in your eclipsed conformation. So he said that okay, that may not be in your eclipsed conformation, then in that case your L group, that is the large group, is in a staggered conformation, where it is perpendicular, not antiperiplanar, rather it is perpendicular to your carbonyl group. And in that case, so the large group would be perpendicular to your uh, carbonyl carbon oxygen, and we can have two different conformations in that way. So now which would be the case of your nucleophilic attack? So among these two, just you just see, among these two, the nucleophilic attack here, R and S, R is a R and S, okay, that is the small group, and here we have R and M. So now here, if the nucleophile, okay, nucleophile will attack from the smallest side, but in this conformation there would be less steric hindrance as compared to in between R and M. So this is less stable as compared to this one. So in that case, nucleophile will attack from this side, and it would give you the major product. So Felkin's model could satisfy, actually could explain the drawbacks of your Cramp's rule, but still some drawbacks were there, which was actually beyond the scope. But still, we can just, if it is asked in a short note or one, you can just say that uh, in case of your Felkin's model, the conformation, in the conformation, the large group is actually not antiperiplanar, but it is perpendicular, and again it can be among all the conformations, possible conformation, among these two possible conformations, where R and S there is less interaction as compared to R and M, and this one is the more stable conformation, so the nucleophile attacks from this side, giving you this one as the major product. Next, Prelog's rule. This also, it is only actually you. It is an extension of your Cramp's rule. So this is applicable for chiral alcohols and alpha hydroxy acids. So this alpha hydroxy acids, here also the nucleophile attacks from yours from attacks the carbonyl carbon from the smaller side which is attached to your carbonyl group. Okay, so here we have three different groups, small, medium and large. So the nucleophile which is going to attack your carbonyl carbon, that has to have, it would be on the same side as on the your group which is smaller in size. So you just see this is of the plane, this one is of the plane. So that is your Prelux rule. It is just an extension of Cramp's rule, and it is applicable only in case of your alpha hydroxy acids. So next is your qualitative correlation between conformation and reactivity. I think should we take a break of 5 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we will be back by 7:05 or 7:07. Okay. So till now, if anyone is having any doubts, we can just discuss. Actually, you can just see the questions which is given in the. You can go through those questions which is given in the end of your units, like chapters. So from that also you can get some questions. Okay. If anyone is having doubt, any doubt till now, you can just ask me. We can discuss. Okay. So should we continue? All are back from the break or not? ब्रेक से सब वापस आ गए या नहीं आए? Okay, we can continue then. Okay. So till now we have discussed actually what is configuration, how we determine configuration, then what is a prochiral centers, then enantiotopic phases, enantiotopic ligands, and how to predict your product if you are already having a chiral group by your Cram's rule, Felkin's model, and the last one is your Prelog's rule. So next is how we can give a reactivity, how we can actually check the product based on the conformations. So any substrates or reactants, it can have either conformationally rigid diastereomers or conformationally mobile diastereomers or substrates with two or more conformers. We will deal with these ones. What are your conformationally rigid diastereomers? You just see when we have a uh, cyclohexanol, one, two, three, four, four tertiary butyl cyclohexanol. Uh, its trans isomer, in its trans isomers, both the groups are in your equatorial positions, and in the cis isomer, tertiary butyl group would be in the equatorial position, and OH group has to be on your axial position. So these two are actually diastereomers, and you cannot interconvert. So these are actually rigid diastereomers. So among this, equatorial one is more stable as compared to your axial ones. So and reactivity wise, in some reactions this one would be more reactive as compared to this one, and in some reactions this axial that is your cis isomer would be more reactive as compared to your trans isomer. Similar, this trans to alpha decalol and trans to beta decalol. These two are also your diastereomers. You cannot go from your, in case of your true alpha, OH group is on your, in both the cases, this is your transdecalol, and this was in your equatorial position, and here it is in your axial position. You cannot interconvert this one to this one by flipping, as we know that there we cannot. In normal case, your cyclohexanon from the equatorial to axial, you can go from equatorial to axial, but in case of your transdecalin, it is not. Interconversion of transdecalin is not possible. And sometimes you can have some conformationally mobile diastereomers. Among them, these two diastereomers, some are more stable, and one give one product, the other one could give you another product. And when we have some substrates where we have two or more conformers, which are actually, some conformers are stable state and some conformers are less stable. So in that case, the overall specific reaction rate depends upon the specific reaction rate of the conformers and the ground state population of the conformer. Uh, Mm, that means the more the number of conformers which are more stable, that is the ground state population of the conformers. So total specific reaction rate is equivalent to Ni is your mole fraction of the ith conformer, and Ki is the specific reaction of your conformers. So this, to specify the product or to know the product, there is one rule. Okay, these conformers can be homomeric, that means it behave identically with respect to the rate of the reaction and product formed. It can be enantiomeric, that means under a chiral condition that would behave identically but differently under your chiral conditions. Under chiral conditions, they would give, one conformer would give one enantiomer, the other conformer would give another enantiomer. We'll see all these examples. And diastereomeric means one conformer will give one diastereomer, the other one will give another, its diastereomer of the other product. So this, for example, in case of your malic acid, okay, this malic acid can have two conformations. This one is your uh, eclipsed conformation, and this one with staggered conformation, which are interconvertible. Okay, and eclipsed conformation. Okay, this eclipsed conformer would, when it undergoes actually elimination reaction, that gives you a malic acid, which is a cis acid, and this your staggered conformer, which upon elimination reaction gives you fumaric acid, which is a trans acid. So that is going to give you two different diastereomers, because the relationship between malic acid and fumaric acid is that they are two diastereomers. So we can just say that this these hydrogens are your diastereotopic, and these two conformers are diastereo, means these two conformers are diastereomeric. Okay, these two ligands, these hydrogens are diastereotopic, and these two conformers are your diastereomeric, because they are giving you two different diastereomers. Okay, so this, actually, what would be the product, what would be the major product that can be given by one principle that is known as your Cotton-Hammett principle. So this principle describes how the product distribution of a reaction, where it involves the rapid interconversion of reactants, is determined by the transition state energy, not the relative concentration of the reactants. Whatever be the relative concentration of the reactant, but mostly the reaction depends on your transition state. What is a transition state? Actually, transition state, whenever we are performing an reaction, it passes through a high energy barrier, and that is known as your transition state, where it has the highest energy. Okay, that energy, the difference between your reactance energy and the transition state energy, that energy is known as your activation energy. In the next class, we will go detail thermodynamics and kinetics. So activation energy. So according to this Curtin-Hammett principle, the product distribution depends on the transition state energies, not on the relative concentration of the reactants. So for example, suppose we have one compound, that is S. It has two conformers, A and B, where they can be rapidly interconvert to each other. And A giving rise to one conformer A will giving rise to product C, and another conformer B giving rise to conformer D. So here your total uh, concentration, it does not depend on the concentration of A or B, rather it depends on Kc and Kd. That is your rate of constant for formation of C and rate constant for the formation of D. It does not depend on the concentration of A and B. Rather, we can just say rate constant. Again, it depends on your transition state. The higher the transition state, that means it would be higher in energy, and in that case the product formed in along that pathway where you have higher activation energy, then that product would be less formed. For example, we can have four different situations where you have one more stable conformer giving the major product, provided the rate of reaction of more stable conformation is higher. Less stable conformer giving the major product, provided the rate of reaction of less stable conformation is higher. When the rate of reaction would be higher, in which case you have a lower activation energy, or the energy of your transition state is less. And more stable conformer giving the major product when rates of reaction of two conformers are comparable. And when both conformers are equally stable and present in equal amount, then the major product would be the one having lower free energy of activation. For example, in this case, you have two conformers, A and B. So among this, A is more stable. As you can see, it is lower in energy, and B is higher in energy. But and again, A is the actually more stable conformer, and the reaction pathway which it gives product C, it has lower energy of activation, lower free energy change, lower change, or the activation energy is less. And in that case, here your B conformer is higher in energy. Again, its transformation requires higher activation energy. So in that case, the product formed would be more from your major conformer, that is the most stable conformer A. For example, in this case, in case of your butane, okay, we can have cis butane, formation of cis butane. So among your A and B, okay, A and B, that is we have got it from your 2-bromo butane. So from 2-bromo-butane, we can have two different kind of conformers. So in one conformer where CH3 group both are having your in your Gauss interaction, and here both the CH3 group are in anti-periplanar geometry. So which is the most stable conformer actually, would be B, giving rise to your, okay, this example is not actually appropriate here because trans is more stable, and again this one is more stable. So I would just take another, but just you remember, this is the first condition, the more stable conformer gives the major product, provided the rate of reaction of more stable conformation is higher. So in that case, here the rate of reaction is higher because here we have a less energy of activation. And in this one, here we have two situations where in a conformer A is more stable, conformer B is less stable. But here your the pathway where A conformer giving product C is having higher activation energy, and conformer B giving D is going through a less activation energy pathway. So in that case, this one would be favored, this won't be favored. Rather, A would interconvert to B first, so that and gives you the major product. For example, uh, this is your the mm, in this reactant, this one is less stable and this one is more stable. This conformer is more stable and this conformer is less stable because of the interaction here. Here there would be less interaction, but still that is going to give you, this one is the major product because it goes through a less energy pathway, and this goes through a high energy pathway. So this conformer will rapidly interconvert to give the less stable conformer, whether this its concentration in the ground state would be more, but its product, and the reaction leading to the product from this conformation is high energy. So it will rather interconvert to the less stable conformer, which gives the product in a faster rate because of the lower activation energy. Okay, when we have two the conformers equally stable, so in that case, the product would be, the major product would be the one where there is lower activation energy. For example, in this case, in this elimination reaction, that we have two conformers in the transform. Okay, where this is your uh, 2 halo cyclohexanol. So, okay, in this case, it can be in the trans form where EE, and it can be in the diaxial form AA. So the di-equatorial form, in case of your di-equatorial form, although it is they both are equally probable, but here there won't be, in the reaction is not easy here because of because this is an elimination reaction. It needs a anti-periplanar geometry, which is possible in this case, but not an elimination. Okay, this is an epoxidation reaction. So in this case, transform, which is your diaxial, it is actually in the proper position to for your elimination of halogen. So this one would give you a lower energy situation. So diaxial, here the lower activation energy, so this one would be your product. It won't give you the product because it would go through a higher energy pathway. For example, if we have like this compound which can exist in okay, this compound 2 and 4, they can interconvert by 3. Okay, so these two compounds, this is actually alpha beta ketoester. So this beta ketoester, when undergoes actually hydrogenation, we are using a catalyst, so that can either give you R product, anti product, or your syn product. So actually, among this, you can just see, this one is having lower activation energy and this one is having higher activation energy. So this, whatever your 4 is there, that will again interconvert through this transition state to 2, and that will undergo the reaction, that hydrogenation faster because of the lower activation energy. So you would get your anti product, you would never get your syn product. So next comes your molecular dissymmetry and chiro-optical properties. In the last class, yesterday, we have discussed about asymmetry, dissymmetry, all those things. So dissymmetry, how they actually, this molecular dissymmetry or asymmetry molecules, how they behave in our optical, like we have told that chiral compounds give rotate the plane polarized lights. So how this chiro-optical properties and molecular dissymmetry are actually connected. So if we have a light, like any kind of light, we know that that has a wave-like property, and this electromagnetic radiation have electric field and a perpendicular magnetic field. Okay, so suppose we have one wave which goes in this direction. So that is the direction of propagation. It has an electric vector as well as a magnetic field vector. Suppose we have two waves are present at the same place at the same time. So in that case, as these are vectors, so there would be summation. So that can be added off. So we have two like electromagnetic waves. So I can just say these are like electric waves as well as magnetic waves. So we just check like two different uh, waves at the same time. Okay. So now when we are just considering only the electric vectors, and you just think the two waves uh, are going in different direction, but one of them moves wave moving ahead of the other. So one is moving ahead of the other. Okay, so in that case we would have a wave like property like this. So if we have many waves who are uh, going in this direction, but one is they are going in different times, so in that case the electromagnetic waves continuously rotate in the same direction. We can see that the electromagnetic waves are rotating in the same direction. So this is called as your circularly polarized light. So one of them is called right circularly polarized light, which one is actually rotating in the clockwise manner, and the other one is called the left circularly polarized light. For example, if see this one is a right circularly polarized light or clockwise direction, and this one is your anti-clockwise direction. I have just given an opposite. This one is right circularly polarized, this one is your left circularly polarized light. So from the point of view of the source, it could be considered okay, same, it was okay. uh, so now this right circularly polarized light or left circularly polarized light, or if we just view it, that is you can just see the light is actually going through all the directions. So, what is your circular birefringence and optical rotation? When a linearly polarized light passes through dissymmetric medium such as calcite, its two components. As you can just see, the right circularly polarized light and the left circularly polarized light, when they coincide, that gives you a linear polarized light. That is this blue structure. So this linearly polarized light, when passed through a dissymmetric medium such as calcite, that is actually one crystal, it's two components, because our linearly polarized light has two components. One is your left polarized light, left circularly polarized light, and right circularly polarized light. So in that case, the left circularly polarized light and the right circularly polarized light will exhibit two different refractive indexes, NL and NR. So maybe the RCPL, that is your right circularly polarized light, will travel faster in the chiral medium than LCPL if NR is less than NL. That is, the refractive index of your right circularly polarized light is less as compared to the refractive index of the left circularly polarized light. In that case, the material is called your dextrorotatory and has positive specific rotation, and it would be the other way around for your levorotatory material, where your NL would be more as compared to your NR. Okay, so in the case of your optical rotation, in the circularly birefringent medium, the phase relationship between the circularly polarized waves changes and the resultant linearly polarized wave rotates. This is the origin of the phenomenon known as your optical rotation, which is measured. Actually, we use it linearly polarized light, and optical rotation is measured in case of your polarimeter, and we use a specific wavelength and we rotate, we check the its rotation. In that case, that is your optical rotation. But when optical rotation is measured as a function of your wavelength, we are in case of your optical rotation only, we are measuring the its measuring its rotation at a particular single wavelength. But when we measure optical rotation as a function of wavelength, like at different wavelength, what is the optical rotation? In that case, it is known as your optical rotatory dispersion spectroscopy. So, what is your CD? That is your circular dichroism. In case of circular dichroism, we just check the wavelength of light only at wavelength of light that can be absorbed by a chiral molecule. We are not going means any wavelength. So at these wavelengths, left and right circularly polarized light will be absorbed to different extents. For example, we have a compound here. So now when we pass our linear polarized light through this compound, it's right circularly polarized light and L circularly polarized light will behave differently. Like it would be, it may absorb more left circularly polarized light and less right circularly polarized light. So now it would not behave as a circularly polarized light, it would behave as a elliptically polarized light because one of the component is less and the other one is more. This effect is called as your circular dichroism and is the difference in absorption of LCPL and RCPL gives your CD. So circular dichroism is measured as a function of wavelength uh, and is the primary spectroscopic property measured by a circular dichroism spectrophotometer. So what is an optical rotatory dispersion? So the optical rotation is measured at only one wavelength. But in case of your circular dichroism, it is measured at a particular wavelength in which your compound absorbs. Okay, at that particular wavelength where your chiral molecule absorbs that particular wavelength. But optical rotation is only measured at this nanometer because this is the monochromatic light where your sodium vapor lamps are used. But whenever we measure optical rotation as a function of wavelength, in that case we get a different information such as structure, conformation and configuration of your organic compound. The rate of change of specific rotation, that is your alpha d with wavelength, is known as your optical rotatory dispersion. So this is a instrumentation for optical rotatory dispersion. So when we plot a graph with optical rotation per wavelength for different wavelength, if we plot a graph, we get a linear curve like this that is known as your plane ORD curves. So it is a positive curve when you just see with decrease in wavelength, with decrease in wavelength the optical rotation, the specific rotation increases, then that gives a positive curve. And when with decrease in wavelength the optical rotation decreases, that is known as a negative curve. So these are your plane ORD curves. And next one is your cotton effect. So cotton effect is actually here, it is well, against wavelength and your angle. So it is on approaching the region of cotton effect from long wavelength, if one first passes through a maxima and then a minimum, then cotton effect is said to be positive. And so in for positive cotton effect it is like a S. And in case when if the trough is observed first while going from your higher wavelength to lower wavelength, we are always checking from higher wavelength to lower wavelength, or we are increasing the energy, or while going from higher wavelength to lower wavelength, first you see a trough and then you get a crest. In that case, that is known as your negative cotton effect curve. So cotton effect curve, how this is applicable, we can go from your axial Hallow-Keton rule. Okay, so the axial Hadlock, there are some actually sector rules which gives the idea what would be the configuration of a molecule by seeing its cotton effect. So one rule is for your axial halogens in case of your cyclohexanones. So in case of cyclohexanones, substituted cyclohexanones, or when your axial uh, alpha carbon is substituted with one hydrogen group. So this sector rule is applicable for your axial halogens, uh, and mostly in not in case of your equatorial halogens. So when it was just seen that the positive uh, when the axial halogen is present at alpha position appears towards the right hand side of the observer, then the compound will show a strong positive effect. Suppose you just see this one from this side, and you see that it is present at the right hand side of the observer, then it would show a positive Cotton effect. But if you see this molecule and you are seeing from this side, and it would see that the alpha halogen appears on the left hand side of the observer, then that would show a strong negative Cotton effect, and these two are actually mirror image of each other. So if one enantiomer gives you positive Cotton effect, the other enantiomer will give you negative Cotton effect. So by seeing the Cotton effect, you can say which isomer you have, whether you have your this isomer R or S. You can give the configuration. For example, in this trans 2 decalone, which gives a positive Cotton it's after bromination, it gives a positive Cotton effect. So you can just easily denote its actually configuration. So it can either give this compound or this compound. So you just see, if it is giving this compound, then it was going to give you a positive Cotton effect because you are viewing from this side and bromine is on the right hand side. So it would give you a positive Cotton effect. So it has a S enhanced S configuration, and this in this case bromine is on the left hand side, and that gives a negative Cotton effect. That should give you a negative Cotton effect. So as the product formed from this one gives a positive Cotton effect, then you can just summar you can just prove that this is the configuration of the compound which is formed, because this one is also giving you positive Cotton effect, which has a configuration S configuration. So next is your octant rule. So octant rule, in this case, we have just given the substituent, which is like the halogen substituent when it is present at your position number 2. And when you have some other substituents, in case of your cyclohexanones, when you have some other substituents present at other positions, we can have 5 positions, 5 different positions. Again, you have equatorial and axial positions. So in this rule, actually, there are 3 planes uh, in your molecules. So first, as you can just say, you can have octants, means you have 8 sectors. Okay, so if you just have a cube like this, you can have this type of actually you can make halves like this, and then you can have octants in which it is a front octant and that is your rear octant. Now this cyclohexanone can be, actually you can have 2 different planes in which you have a um, front octant plus minus plus plus minus, and you have a rear octant. According to the an atom in an octant makes a contribution to the Cotton effect according to the sign of the octant. If that substituent or any group which is present on the um, positive octant, then that will give you a positive Cotton effect, and if it is present in your negative octant, then it would give you a negative Cotton effect. Okay, and then there is another thing is that substituents on or near nodes make no or small contributions. For example, when it is your carbon number 4 that is present in your uh, xz plane, so that is a nodal plane. So there won't be any contribution if you have a substituent at position number 4, then there won't be any contribution from that one. And again, the okay, you can just see here uh, the equatorial positions. Okay, the substituents at C2, the equatorial position at C2, we have an axial here and one equatorial here. So equatorial position, that is again along your this XY plane, near your XY plane. So there would be less contribution from your equatorial positions along your at carbon number 2 and 6. And but axial substituents at carbon number 2, and this is axial, this is axial, so this lie away from xy plane, so they contribute more towards your cotton effect. uh, so whether it is present at equatorial or axial, that is going to have equal contribution. For example, how you determine the configuration of uh, con- configuration. For example, your R plus methyl cyclohexanone exhibits a positive cotton effect. So among these two, which one is the preferred conformation, we would check whether the CH3 group is on the axial position or the CH3 is on your equatorial position. You can just go from this one to this one. So if we just check, this is the and again the rear quadrant is plays an important role. So rear sector, in case of a rear sector, so this is my carbon number 1, and this is present in carbon number 3, 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, so carbon number 2 is on the left side of this one, 2, and this is your 3, this is 4, 5 and 6. 6 is on the right hand side, so this is the center. So now you just see plus minus minus plus, that is your rear sector, and this CH3 group is present in your positive quadrant. That means it would give you a positive cotton effect. But in this conformation, so you just see this is 1 2 3 4 5 6, and here it is on the right hand side. This is 1 2 3 4 sorry 4 5 and 6. So the CH3 group is now in the negative side, so that would give you a negative cotton effect. But our product, our molecule actually gives a positive cotton effect, so this is the actual conformation of your compound. Similarly, in this case also, you can assign which one is going to give you positive cotton effect and which one is going to give you negative cotton effect. For example, in this case, we have to start from this. It has given this one as carbon number 2, so this one is your carbon number 2. Carbon number 3 is onto the right hand side, then 4, then 10, then 9, then this is your carbon number 1. And again, your this substituent is present in your positive quadrant, so that is going to give you a positive cotton effect. And in this case, if you just see in this molecule, this one is present in a negative quadrant, so that is going, its enantiomer is going to give you a negative cotton effect. These are the uh, actually from cotton effect or optical rotatory dispersion curves, we can assign the configuration. So if one enantiomer gives positive cotton effect, its other enantiomer will give you negative cotton effect. And by taking the conformation, you can say which one is going to give you positive cotton effect and which one is going to give you negative cotton effect. Next is helicins. We know that helicins provide your helicity rule. So actually, some molecules have your helicity, means that has helical structure. I have just okay. Right-handed helix. If you have a right-handed helix, that is known as your P, and if you have a left-handed helix, that is known as your M. That is your minus. P stands for plus and M stands for your minus. So P helicity compounds, that gives a positive rotation and a positive cotton effect, and M, that is your minus helicity compounds, gives you negative cotton effect. For example, in case of your cystidenes, these helicity rules are given as follows. So if for this if you go from this, in this side it is in a clock, if you are going from this to this, you are going in a clockwise direction, then that would give you a positive cotton effect. And while going from one carbon to another, you are going through a this double bond to this double bond, you are going in an anti-clockwise manner, then that is going to give you a negative cotton effect, so that is denoted as M helicins. So how we determine that we will go from this to this? For that, there is a rule. Okay, this this one is not being shown. to reduce this one. Okay. So according to the rule, you have to check from the top plane, like which is towards you. So which is, for example, this one. So if I see from this one, and in that case, my double bonds, this butadiene, while viewing from this, the butadiene here, this goes in a clockwise manner. That's why this is PSCs. And while viewing from this carbon, it goes in a anti-clockwise manner. So that is your uh, aim. For example, in this case, this is the top carbon. So while going from this one to uh, this, that it would give you a anti-clockwise fashion, and from going from this to this one, that would be a clockwise fashion. That's why P. Or how you would do the stereochemical descriptors, I got it from some website. So you have to first identify the axis of the helix. For example, this is the axis of the helix which goes into the screen, and you have to check it I above the molecule, and you have to check whether the molecule rotates clockwise as you move from the front to rear. Like this one is our front carbon, which one is like given in the solid waste. If it goes from front to rear in a clockwise manner, then that is given the descriptor plus, and if it rotates from anti-clockwise manner, that is given the rotation minus. So actually, these are the helicians when you have a helical geometry, which we have, I think, helicins we have discussed yesterday, but how you give your descriptors. Next is lowest rule, which yesterday also we have discussed about assigning configuration to your allenes where you have a chiral axis. There is another rule that is known as your lowest rule, where you can assign configurations from your cotton effect also you can assign configurations. So first what you have to do, you have to check from uh, okay, you have to check from which side you are checking. So in this side I have this one as A. This was in this case they say the polarizability. This one is polarizability B, this one is polarizability C, and this one is polarizability D. So this is the higher polarizability and this is our higher polarizability. So while checking, while giving the notation as we have given in the last class. So first we are viewing it from this side. So chlorine will be on the top, hydrogen will be bottom, and hydrogen, this hydrogen, the rear carbon hydrogen is on the left hand side and CH3 is on the right hand side. So this is my A and this is my D. We do not have to denote these two. And while going from priority A to D, if it goes in a clockwise direction, then that is going to give you a cotton effect positive cotton effect, and it would be a dextro would have R configuration. That is your lowest rule. Similarly, for example, if we check the uh, configuration whether it is going to give you positive cotton effect or negative cotton effect, if we check from view from this side, okay, phenyl would be higher polarizability and hydrogen will be of lower polarizability, and again this phenyl will be of higher polarizability and this hydrogen will be lower polarizability. But A and C, among A and C, this one would be okay. So I have to put A, that is phenyl, on the top, this one hydrogen is B on down, and this hydrogen D is on the left hand side and this phenyl C on the right hand side. So this is higher polarizability, this is lower polarizability. So while going from higher polarizability to lower polarizability, it goes in a clockwise manner, so that is going to give you a positive cotton effect. You can also say if I view it from this side, so in that case, if you view it from this side, so your A, that is this phenyl, it would be now A, and this one would be B, and this one would be your C, and this one would be D. So A would be on your left hand side, B is on your right hand side when you are viewing from this side, and your C is top, D would be bottom. So now going from A to C, you have going in clockwise manner, so that is going to give you a positive cotton effect, whether you are viewing along this direction or whether you are viewing it along this direction. In both the cases it is going to give you the same positive cotton effect. For example, in this case, this one COH group is having higher polarizability, so that would be denoted as A, and this one would be B, and this one would be of higher polarizability and this one would be of lower polarizability. So now as I am viewing from this side, so now my okay, and so we're viewing from this side. Okay, so B on the left, A on the right, and C on the top, and D on the bottom. So while going from A to C, you have to trace in an anti-clockwise manner, so that would give you a negative cotton effect. So you can just take all these examples where it is going to give you a positive cotton effect, where it is going to give you a negative cotton effect. And its configuration we have already discussed in the last class, whether it was going to be R or S, but here it gives you whether it is going to give you a positive cotton effect or a negative cotton effect. It is going while tracing the path from A to B to C, it goes anti-clockwise, but still it gives you a positive cotton effect because of the relationship between the higher polarizability. So this is anti-clockwise, that's why S, but it has a positive cotton effect. Similarly here, yeah, it is while going from A to B to C, it goes in a clockwise manner, so it is R, but it has a anti-clockwise manner, while the in between the polarizability A to C, that is your anti-clockwise, so that would be have a negative cotton effect. So cotton effect in case of these allenes, the cotton effect is dependent on the polarizability of your groups. If the higher polarized you are viewing from that side, from that side, when you are viewing from the side, its higher polarizability to the higher polarizability on the higher polarizable group on the other side. If it traces the path clockwise, then that would be your positive cotton effect, and if anti-clockwise, then that would be your negative cotton effect. There is no relationship whether R would be R would give you positive cotton effect or S would give you negative cotton effect. That is not true. The enantiomers, if one enantiomer gives positive cotton effect, the other enantiomer would give you negative cotton effect. Okay, so this finishes today's. I think I have covered all the units, whichever is given in your like like your course, which was provided in your actually online syllabus. So if any of you have any doubt, you can just ask me. We can have a discussion. I hope you can getting whatever I am teaching. I don't know, because this is just becoming one-way process. I am only talking and talking.
Ma'am, we can understand.
You can understand. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
whenever I become very fast, you can just like pause me, please. We cannot understand here. So because stereochemistry needs lots of imagination. So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
have to imagine a lot. You can go through some YouTube lectures. Actually, some I would just search some Professor Basak from IIT Kharagpur. I think he has very nice lectures, and you can just go through NPTEL lectures. Okay, NPTEL
Again, again tell ma'am, we got
NPTEL. I am just writing it.
M
NPTEL. Okay, so that is NPTEL lectures. So NPTEL lectures, among there are many NPTEL lectures. Among that, some Basak, I think from IIT Kharagpur, one professor. Uh, he has a very Means his classes, his lectures are very good. Basak, I think in lectures. You can go through, just go through YouTube. In YouTube, it is available actually. Professor A. Basak. Okay, Professor A. Basak, stereochemistry. He is from IIT Kharagpur. So NPTEL, in NPTEL. You can just type there. He has given very good understanding by giving many examples, many actually models. Through models, it is easier to understand actually. So anyone is having any doubt?
Ma'am, if possible, means what you represent to us, that if you can send
These
us,
slides,
then it's good.
the slides I am showing.
That slides.
Okay, I can
हेलो
send.
मैम
Yes,
मैम प्रीवियस क्वेश्चन थोड़ा मतलब मिल सकता है क्या?
you can just check it in Google. Actually, I have not checked. You can. I would just check. Okay.
ओके मैम.
Over the weekend, I will just check what are the questions, and I will ask like how to send you those lectures, these presentation slides.
In
Have you formed any group or somewhere? No. Have you all formed a WhatsApp group who all are taking the classes? Have you
Yes,
formed a
ma'am.
WhatsApp group?
yes,
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 ma'am.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So yesterday, some of you took my number. You can
Yes.
just WhatsApp, give some message in WhatsApp. Okay,
Okay.
official groups are there. Okay, I can just send. But I have to ask. Okay, I don't think that would be a problem. I can send your slides. Okay, you
So we
just
should add your number, na?
I don't know. Okay, officially, I don't know whether you can add my number or not. I can just send any one of you. Just say hi to me in my WhatsApp. That is my WhatsApp number. What I have given to you. Then I can
Yeah.
just send you the slides. Okay,
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
most welcome. So on Monday, we can just again have discussion on Monday and Tuesday. There we do not have that much radiochemistry. We will discuss there the reactive intermediates. Okay, like the carbocation, carbanions, carbines, those intermediates, and some rearrangement reactions. Those are not that tough. Stereochemistry is more tough, I think. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, okay. So
Okay.
have a
Thank you, ma'am.
weekend and happy Raksha Purnima. Raksha
Thank you,
Bandhan.
ma'am. Same to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
थैंक यू मैम.
Thank you.
हेलो अभिजीत,
हाँ भाई.
असाइनमेंट ସଇଲାଣି ନା?
नहीं ଲେଖା ଚାଲିଛି ଆଉ. ସେ ମ୍ୟାଡାମଙ୍କ ନମ୍ବର କିଏ ନେଲେ କିଏ?
ମୋ ପାଖରେ ଅଛି, ମୁଁ ପଠେଇଦେବି. ମୋ ପାଖରେ ଅଛି, ମୁଁ ପଠେଇଦେବି.
ଆଜ୍ଞା. ହଉ,
ହଁ.
ତାଙ୍କୁ ଗ୍ରୁପ ର ଏଡ୍ କରିନଥିବେ ହେଲା କି? ଯାହା ହବ ସେ ତ କହିଲେ ଯେ ଗ୍ରୁପ ର ଏଡ୍
ମୁଁ ତ
କରିବେ
ଆଡମିନ୍
କାରଣ.
ନାହିଁ, ମୁଁ କାହିଁକି ଆଡ୍ କରିଯିବି? ନାଇଁ, କହିବା କଥା କି ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ଆଡ୍ କରନି, କାହିଁକି ନା ଆମେ କେବଳ ଷ୍ଟୁଡେଣ୍ଟ ମାନେ ଅଛୁ ନା.
ଆଜ୍ଞା.
ସାର୍ ମାନେ ଆସିଲେ ଆମର ମାନେ ଆମର କିଛି ପର୍ସନାଲ ଡିସିସନ ହଉ କିମ୍ବା ଆମେ କଣ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ଇଏ କରୁ, ସେଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ରକାର ତାଙ୍କ ଉପରେ ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ଇଫେକ୍ଟ ପଡିବ.
ହଁ, ସେ ବି ଟିକେ ଫ୍ରିଲି ହେଇପାରିବେନି. ତାପରେ ଆମେ ଯେମିତି କଥା
ହଁ,
ହଉଛନ୍ତି
ନାଇଁ ନାଇଁ
ଡିସ୍କସନ
ନାଇଁ,
କରୁଛନ୍ତି.
କୌଣସି ଲେକ୍ଚରଙ୍କୁ ଆମେ ଆଡ୍ କରିବାନି, ବାକି ଆମେ ଷ୍ଟୁଡେଣ୍ଟ ମାନେ ରହିବା. କାହିଁକି ନା ଆମେ ଆମର ଡିସାଇଡ କରିବା ନା କଣ କରିବା କଣ ନାହିଁ, ଆମର ଯାହା ମାନେ ପର୍ସନାଲ ଯାହା,
ହଁ ହଁ.
ସେଇଟା ହେଲା କଥା.
ଆଉ ଜଣେ
ଆଉ
ଯେମିତି.
ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ଟିକେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ପଚାରି ଦେଇକି ମାନେ ବୁଝିବା ମାନେ କଣ ସବୁ ମାନେ ଇଏ କରୁଛନ୍ତି. ମାନେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ବି ଡାଉଟ ଅଛି ଯେ ମାନେ ପୋଷ୍ଟାଲ ରେ ପଠେଇବାର ହବ କି ଯାଇକି ସବମିଟ କରିବାକୁ ପଡିବ ଫିଜିକାଲି.
ଯାଇକି ପ୍ରାୟ ସବମିଟ କରତେ ପଡିବ, କାହିଁକି ନା ଆମର ଜଣେ ସାର୍ ଥିଲେ ଯୋଉ ଅଛନ୍ତି ଗ୍ରୁପ ର ଧ୍ରୁବ ଚନ୍ଦ୍ର ପ୍ରଧାନ ବୋଲି, ସିଏ
ନାଇଁ,
ତାଙ୍କର
ଯଦି
ଯାଇକି.
ଯାଇକିନା ବି ସବମିଟ କରିବାକୁ ପଡିବ, ମୋର କହିବା
ଆଜ୍ଞା.
କଥା କି ମାନେ ଆମେ କେତେ ଜଣ ଗୋଟେ ଡିସାଇଡ କରିବା ଯେ ଏଇ ତାରିଖ ଆମକୁ ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି ନା ସେପ୍ଟେମ୍ବର 15 ରୁ 30 ଭିତରେ, ସେଇ 15
ହଁ
ଦିନ ଭିତରେ ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ଡେଟ୍ ଫିକ୍ସ କରିବା ଯାହା ଦ୍ୱାରା କି ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ ମିଶିକି ଯାଇପାରିବା.
ହଁ, ଗୋଟେ
କଥା
ମାନେ
କଣ
ସେମ
ହଉଛି କି
ଟୁ
କିଏ
ସେମ.
ସବୁ ଅଲଗା ଡେଟ ରେ ଆସିଲେ ଆମେ ମିଶି ପାରିବାନି.
ଆଜ୍ଞା, ତାହେଲେ
ଠିକ ଅଛି,
କାଲିକି
ଯଦି
କାଲିକି
ଫିଜିକାଲି ଯାଇକି ଦେବାକୁ ପଡିବ ଠିକ ଅଛି, ବାକି
କାଲିକି
ଗୋଟେ
ତାହେଲେ ଏଇ
ଡେଟ୍
ଯୋଉ
ଫିକ୍ସ
ଅନଲାଇନ
କରିବା
କ୍ଲାସ ହବ,
ସମସ୍ତେ ପହଞ୍ଚିବ.
କାଲି କି ଭାଇ ଯୋଉ ଗୋଟେ ଅନଲାଇନ କ୍ଲାସ ହବ ସେଇଠି ହଉଛି ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ଆଗତରା ଡିସ୍କସନ
କାଲି ନାହିଁ ତ,
କରିକି
କାଲି ଶନିବାର ରବିବାର ପ୍ରତି ସପ୍ତାହର ଶନିବାର ରବିବାର କୌଣସି କ୍ଲାସ ନାହିଁ, ଯାଇକି 2-3 ଦିନ ପରେ।
ତାହେଲେ ସେଇ ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ନହେଲେ ଡିସ୍କସନ କରି କରତେ ପଡିବ।
ହଁ ଆମେ କେବଳ ଯେହେତୁ ଆମେ ମାନେ ପିଲାମାନେ ସବୁ ଅଛେ, କିଏ ଜଣେ ଆଡମିନ ଭିତରୁ ତମ ମାନେ କିଏ ଗୋଟେ ଏନାଉନ୍ସ କର।
ହଁ ମୁଁ ଅଛି ଆଡମିନ ଅଛି ଗ୍ରୁପରେ।
ହଁ କର, ବାକି ବୁଝିଦବା ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କର।
ଆସାଇନମେଣ୍ଟ କୋଉଠି ଯାଇକି ଦେବା ପାଇଁ ପଡିବ?
କେନ୍ଦ୍ରାପଡା।
କେନ୍ଦ୍ରାପଡା
ସେଠି ମଝିରେ ସେ ଫିଜିକାଲ କ୍ଲାସ ହେଇନି ନା ସେଗୁଡାକ?
ନାହିଁ
ଗୋଟେ
ନାହିଁ।
କ୍ଲାସ ମେ ବି ହେଇନି 27 ତାରିଖ। ବାକି କହିବା କଥା କି ଆସାଇନମେଣ୍ଟ ଯଦି ଆମକୁ ଫିଜିକାଲ ଯାଇକି ଦେବାକୁ ପଡିବ, ଗୋଟେ ଡେଟ୍ ଫିକ୍ସ କଲେ ସମସ୍ତେ ଗୋଟେ ଗେଟ ଟୁଗେଦର ହେଇକି ମିଶି ପାରିବା। ଆଉ
ହଁ ନିହାତି ସେଇଟା।
ସେଇଟା ହେଲା କଥା। ଠିକ ଅଛି।
ନା ଯିବା, ମୁଁ କାଲିକି ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ପକଉଛି, କାଲିକି ସେ ଆସନ୍ତୁ ସେଇ ସନ୍ଧ୍ୟା ବେଳେ ଆସନ୍ତୁ। ଅନଲାଇନ ଆସନ୍ତୁ ସନ୍ଧ୍ୟାବେଳେ, ମୁଁ କାଲିକି ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ପକଉଛି।
କାଲି କାହିଁକି, ଏବେ ମେସେଜ କରିଦବା, ଏବେ ମେସେଜ କରିଦବା। ମାନେ କଣ ଚାହୁଁଛ କଣ ନାହିଁ, ଆମକୁ ତ ଡେଟ ଅଲରେଡି କୋଅର୍ଡିନେଟର ତ ସେଣ୍ଡ କରିଛନ୍ତି ନା।
ହଁ ସେ ତ
ଫାଷ୍ଟ
ଅଲରେଡି
ଜାଣିବାକୁ
ଅଫିସିଆଲ।
ପଡିବ ଯେ କେତେ ଜଣ ପୋଷ୍ଟାଲ ରେ ପଠେଇବେ, କେତେ ଜଣ ଫିଜିକାଲ ଯିବେ। ଆଉ ଯଦି ଭୋଟ ପ୍ରବଳ ହଉଛି ଫିଜିକାଲ ଦବା ପାଇଁ, ତାହେଲେ ଗୋଟେ ଡେଟ୍ ଫିକ୍ସ କରିଦବା।
ହଁ ସେଇଟା ଭଲସେ। ଆମର କୋଉଠି ଲେଖିଛନ୍ତି ମେନସନ ତ କାଇଁ କରିନାହାନ୍ତି ଡେଟ୍ ଭାଇ, ନା ଡେଟ୍ କରିଛନ୍ତି
କଣ
ମେନସନ
ବା
ମୋର।
ଏ ଯୋଉ କଣ କିଏଟା ଆମର ଯୋଉ
ପ୍ରଭାକର
ଇଗ୍ନୋର
ମଣ୍ଡଳ।
ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି ନା। ନା ଆମର କେମିଷ୍ଟ୍ରି ଯିବା ବଳେ ଛାଡିଦେ। ମୋର କହିବା କଥା, ଆମର ତ ମେନ ଗ୍ରୁପ ଅଛି ଯୋଉମାନେ ଯୋଉଟା ଆମକୁ ଅଫିସିଆଲ ନୋଟିସ ଆସୁଛି, ଯୋଉ
ହଁ ହଁ ହଁ
କୋଅର୍ଡିନେଟର ଯୋଉଥିରେ ଆମକୁ ପଠା ହେଇଥିଲା ଯେ ଏମିତି ଏମିତି ପାରାଗ୍ରାଫ କରିବ, ଇଏ କରିବ, ସିଏ କରିବ। ସେଇଟା ବା
ହଁ
ଯଦି
ହଁ ହଁ
ତମେ
ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି
ଫିଜିକାଲି
ଯେ
ଦବା ପାଇଁ ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଟୁ
27।
ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ସବମିଟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଚାହୁଁଛ, ନୋଟିସ ଆସିନଥିଲା, ମେସେଜ ଆସିନଥିଲା।
ହଁ ହଁ ନୋଟିସ ଗୋଟେ ଆସିଛି।
ହଁ ସେଇ ପିରିୟଡ ଭିତରେ ଗୋଟେ ଡେଟ୍ ଫିକ୍ସ କରିଦବା କଥା।
ଆସାଇନମେଣ୍ଟ ସବମିଟ କରିବାକୁ ଭାଇ ଯୋଉ ଅଛି କି ଡେଟ୍ ଟା, ସେଟା ତ କାଇଁ ମେନସନ କରାହେଇନି।
କରାହେଇଛି। ହୁଁ କରାହେଇଛି ଅଫିସିଆଲି ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ଦେଖ। କରାହେଇଛି ସେପ୍ଟେମ୍ବର 15ରୁ 30 ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଟୁ ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ସବମିଟ। ଅକ୍ଟୋବର 10 ଭିତରେ ଇଏ ସବମିଟ। ବାକି ସବୁ ବାୟୋ ପିଲା ବି କେତେ ଜଣ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ, ସେ ସାର୍ ମାନେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଟୁ ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ସବମିଟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଆସ, ଇଏ କର ସିଏ କର।
ଓହୋ ତାହେଲେ ମେ ବି ମୁଁ ଚେକ୍ କରିନଥିବି ପ୍ରାୟ, ମୁଁ ତ ଦେଖୁଛି ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ।
ହଁ
ସେ ତ ଫ୍ରଣ୍ଟ ପେଜ ଗୁଡା ପଠେଇଥିଲେ, ଦେଖିଦଉଛି ବେକରେ ଯଦି ଥିବ।
ହଁ ଯୋଉ ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ଫ୍ରଣ୍ଟ ପେଜ ଯାକ ପଠାଇଥିଲା, ସେଇ ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ମେସେଜ ଆସିଛି। ଅଫିସିଆଲି ଇଗ୍ନୋର 2024 ବେଚ କୋଅର୍ଡିନେଟର ସମଥିଙ୍ଗ।
ହଁ ହଁ ଦେଖୁଛି।
ହଁ ହଁ ଗ୍ରୁପ ରେ ଏଇନା ମେସେଜ ଛାଡିଦିଅ ହେଲା।
କୋଉ ଦିନ ଅଛି ଲାଷ୍ଟ ଡେଟ୍ ଭାଇ ଏଇଟା?
ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଟୁ ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ସବମିଟ କରିବାର ବା ସେପ୍ଟେମ୍ବର 30 ଆଇ ଥିଙ୍କ। ମୁଁ ଟିକେ ମେସେଜ ଟା ପଢିକି ତତେ ମୁଁ ଜଣଉଛି, ମେସେଜ କରୁଛି।
ହଁ ହଁ ଟିକେ ନିହାତି ଇଏ କରିବି ଟିକେ।
ମୁଁ ମେସେଜ ଟା ଫରୱାର୍ଡ କରିଦଉଛି ତତେ।
ହଁ ହଁ।
ହଁ ମୁଁ କରୁଛି, ଏବେ କରୁଛି, 5 ମିନିଟ ଭିତରେ କରୁଛି।